But starting with you and your new lifestyle.
My new lifestyle. It's always been my lifestyle, Keith. Nothing new about it.
Let's tell everybody where you were last night.
No, it was. I was over at the premiere of All or Nothing, which is the Manchester City documentary, the Amazon Prime documentary, chronicling last season. Quite a fortunate storyline to get, where camera crew goes in and.
Fortunate it wasn't the year before, weren't they?
Very fortunate. Very, very lucky that it wasn't. So they got lucky. You do wonder, actually, how many of these documentaries have been made and subsequently scrapped if we would have seen this thing if they didn't have such a great season last year. And you also do wonder as well, you're always a little bit sceptical about at what point did they start filming and how authentic is it? But Vincent Kompany was there last night and he was saying that the cameraman was everywhere. He'd wake up one morning and he'd be on his bedroom floor and stuff like that. And it's like,
there was a bit of controversy last year at games. So at Premier League games, before and after, I would be in and around the dugouts, pitch side, tunnel, waiting for team news, things like that. And then if I was working with a commentator, sometimes he might have to do the interviews after a game. And there was a little bit of animosity between different broadcasters, the fact that these Amazon cameras were getting everywhere, especially for Man City home games, because obviously they were making this documentary. So it hasn't pleased everybody, but they very much got behind the scenes, didn't they? Very
much so. Like, you talk about kind of post-match interviews, and just to kind of start at the end a little bit here, so we got to see episode 1 last night. Episode 2, that they kind of showed a little bit of a teaser for at the end of episode 1, is very interesting. They're going to get some really good stuff out of Sergio Aguero, talking about loneliness and living on his own in England and all his family being in a different continent. So in terms of actually speaking to the players, they've got that. But as you say, the main thing here is the access, the actual first-hand viewing we get of Pep Guardiola in the dressing room. Because I always wondered, are his histrionics, for lack of a better term, on the sideline, are they for real? Is that sort of an act to try and cheese players up? Or is he actually that energetic?
And was he?
Of course he is.
Tactics board in the middle of the dressing room, holding court.
Yeah.
Animated.
Like, he loves the process of the little metallic object and the magnetic function of it all. I think he just loves that. He loves the tactics board. His kind of behaviour in the dressing room is extraordinary, really. It's like, it showed clips of them in the dressing room after Kevin De Bruyne scored to give them that 1-0 win against Chelsea near the start of last season, when we thought that they were going to win the Premier League after that day. And everybody's in the dressing room and Pep Guardiola starts the, "Oh, Kevin De Bruyne" chant. And it's fantastic. It's
Pep Guardiola started
Pep Guardiola, I was like, it's phenomenal. So it's a lot of energy behind the scenes. They go into the pre-match meeting when they have their tactics board before the Liverpool game, where Mane kicks Ederson in the face, and they just cut off the meeting just at the time when it was going to get very, very interesting about how they were going to react if Liverpool did a certain thing. So there's a little bit held back, but overall it's a brilliant viewing of what actually goes on in there. One of the big things we learned last night was the Kevin De Bruyne injury, because all the first team were there.
Literally happened yesterday in training, didn't it?
Yeah, and he showed up in crutches. I think there was a little bit of a gasp. Like, the theatre was like full of City fans, obviously, over there. And when he walked in, it was like, is that De Bruyne on crutches? Him? Yeah. So that was kind of.
We'll go on to him in a minute, because that's going to be a huge blow. There's talk at the moment, isn't there, 2 to 3 months, maybe medial ligaments, and it's an injury that he's had before. But go back to Pep for a second. So you see Pep, not so much last year, but certainly in his first year at Manchester City, did not like doing interviews, full stop.
No.
Arm's length, media, lots of tetchy interviews. So for him to allow this to happen, obviously it wasn't his decision, but he's gone along with it, and it seems as if he's kind of, okay, you're in.
Yeah.
I'd heard story. I know the kit men very well at Manchester City. They speak so highly of him as a person, the way he's got everybody together. But this documentary and this series I think it's going to blow people away, is it?
I think so, yeah. Like, as I say, it's going to get more and more interesting as the season goes on. As we only saw the first episode yesterday. Like, obviously, it's not his decision to do it, but he did seem to accept it. The decision to do it comes from much higher up. And ultimately, the people who are much higher up are probably a little bit less afraid of what's actually being shown here, because it's about their own brand as well. The Begirissteins, all those sort of lads in the dressing room, or in the boardroom, I should say. And some of that stuff is very interesting when they get inside the conference room. Like, speaking of a serious injury and a man on crutches, when Benjamin Mendy goes to Barcelona and gets his operation on his anterior or cruciate last year, it cut straight to the boardroom in Manchester City with about a dozen suits sitting around the table saying, right, Benjamin Mendy's probably going to be out for 6 to 8 months. That means we need to go into the market in January. And it was just such a cold, calculated
see, that surprised you a little bit, didn't it? Whereas I think people don't realise that you are literally a number.
Yeah.
And players a lot of times get criticised, sometimes not rightly in my opinion, because you've seen an example there and they've been quite open about it, about we need a new left back. That's it. Mendy to them didn't matter last year. Getting him right and the medical care that he got obviously was that was in place. But as soon as you are not ready and able and good enough in their eyes to be participating at first team level, not interested in you.
Yeah, especially it's very interesting that Mendy was the example, like coincidentally, because he's such a big character and such an important character in the dressing room. Like after that, to go back to that game and they beat Chelsea 1-0 near the start of last season, he's FaceTiming the lads in the dressing room. Immediately afterwards, they've got Mendy on the phone from Barcelona, and they actually kind of do a little bit of a goggle box in the documentary where Mendy is watching that game and is celebrating. So that's pretty cool.
Guardiola gave him a little bit last weekend after the Arsenal game, didn't he? Well, that's Mendy. And then he basically drives you crazy, but he can do these exceptional things as well, and he needs to stay off social media.
Well, that was an interesting line. Then obviously Mendy replied to the tweet on Twitter, which was quite funny. Like just in terms of that, they like kind of a last point on it. They go to like a player cam in it as well, where Kyle Walker is walking around the back room with a camera basically, and he's chatting to some of the lads. He chats to one of the physios and is like, so who's the hardest lad to work with? And he's like, it's that Fabian Delph guy over there. He's after getting a big head there recently. And Fabian Delph was like, ha ha ha, you bell. And it was like, really? it got the biggest laugh of the night, which I thought was quite cool. But like, you're always interested in how like the English players interact and how the English and the non-English nationals react, because like Silva was talking in the documentary, David Silva, but he was speaking exclusively in Spanish. Like Aguero is the same, and you do forget how poor a lot of the English is of a few of these City players. But
I've been there a long time.
Yes, exactly. So also the last thing just on that, on the Spanish nature of things, the music is shite in the dressing room. It's like Despacito, but even worse than Despacito after games. So I don't know, is it Pep selecting the music or is it one of the South American players?